Hey guys, MasakoX here. Now last year, I talked about my top 24 DBZA moments as part of a 2019 Advent series, and I noticed that not a lot of people got to see that, and I thought I would repurpose it for those of you who might not have gotten a chance to have a look at it. You will find out what parts of Dragon Ball Z Abridged I enjoyed the most out of all of them, and there are a lot of them. And I'll be talking about it in depth with a lot of things that you might not necessarily have ever heard before anywhere else. Yeah, think of it like insider knowledge. So without further ado, let's get moving to number 24 and 2019 Masako. I'll see you there. It was a very memorable time, and I remember all the hype going into it. We had tens of thousands of subscribers before we even had our first episode because of all the previews that we'd done with our respective parties. And when I was looking back at that episode, for the purposes of this project, 20 million views in 11 years. That's just crazy. And if you actually just go back through the first episode, my Goku kind of sounds like this. I hadn't really refined what I wanted to do with that voice. And actually, fun fact, that is the only episode that I don't voice Gohan in the entirety of DBZA. That was Vegeta 3986, that wasn't me. But I got that in episode 2. Okay, this scream that I do, even though it's just Goku falling, I don't remember it well because it's just, Wah! Like, I'd probably go like, woohoo! Like something a bit more wacky. That wasn't bad considering that I'd only been doing voice acting for a couple of years. You improve a lot over time, and the fact that I can tell the difference means I must be doing something right. That's why it's at number 24. Episode 2 was when I first voiced Gohan, and when I actually look back on this video, it was a really, really rough start, because this is when Gohan's at his youngest.
So really, he should be more like up here and something like that, because he's like 4.
You get that idea of what it should have sounded like in the Dead Zone movie. I mean, even then it's not perfect, but it's much better than it was in episode 2, because it was just... It was a lot better than it was when I did the movies with Neighborhood Club Productions. Even then, it was the start of something, and doing the whole, "Stop beating up my daddy!" and just like the scream by hitting Raditz's space armor, that was a lot better than I remember, because I was thinking, okay, there was some hope in this character yet. But, of course, episode 2 is the birth of the Yoshi joke. And fun fact as well, there are going to be plenty of fun facts in this. For the first dozen or so episodes, we recorded this coldly, as in we didn't have a director. We were recording this by ourselves, and if there needed to be redos, then we recorded the redos. But for the first few episodes, we were kind of just going, oh dang, we need to get an episode out every week, because the first few episodes, we were actually doing it like once a week. Man, those were the days when the bridging was simple. A lot of those lines, like the, Are you a Yoshi? Those things, that was all me. And it just showed how inexperienced I was. But it's a classic. It was a lot of fun going back through these old episodes. And the one joke that I really, really liked was the whole, why Goku couldn't just eat a senzu bean or something like that. And he just goes,
I sort of have a hole in my esophagus.
That's one of the first moments in DBZA when you actually go, you know what? That is not only funny, but it also makes sense. There's a lot of those, and this was probably one of the first big ones, at least for me. Now this one is when Goku is finally back, and seriously, I've been not really voicing much of Goku for about 10 episodes at that point, and that's like for about a year and a half worth of content. And yes, granted, I was voicing Gohan during that period, and the most I was doing as Goku was basically screaming my guts out. And you'll see more of that and how I elaborate on that later on in the chart. And as it's based on screams, it's going to be pretty high, so you'll have to tune in for that. But it was a hoot. Well, I mean, my throat wouldn't say that, but for me, it was a lot of fun. But getting back to being Goku properly after a year and a half was a lot of fun. And you'll notice that the voice for that is pretty much where it is right now. So the last 5 years of voicing Goku has been pretty much around about here. And around about episode 45 is when I think it's reached its peak. Like, I think, okay, this is something which is sustainable. I'm really happy with this voice, and this is pretty much how it's gonna be. And it's also the birth of the joke that has lasted the test of time and has been one of the best for Season 3, at least for me. That eat that horse. You get Vegeta just wanting to do nothing, worried about what's happening next, and Goku has to say, when you fall off that horse, you get back up and you eat that horse. Come eat that horse with me, Vegeta. And admittedly, whenever I go to conventions, that's one of the most requested lines I get. And I love saying it because whenever I'm with Lanny, he will retort with the hell are you on about? You know, that kind of thing. So it's always good to have that kind of jumping off point. But when I'm just saying it on my own, it's still a lot of fun because it just doesn't make any sense. Plan to eradicate Christmas. Just that whole moment, that entire special was a lot of fun to record for. I think the best bit of memory that I have is when I said the Gohan line,
Merci beaucoup, Père Noël.
and Kaiser was like, whoa, how do I speak French? And I'm like, dude, I've been speaking French since I was 4. I started learning French when I was 4, and I carried on through until about 18, at A-levels or something like that, and then I kind of just lost interest. But, it's still in there, and I just realised the irony there, you're doing the cell tap. A lot of French DBZA fans really appreciated the accuracy of the accents and the way I said it. That was a nice little tidbit, and surprising Kaiser like that. That is definitely on here for the Christmas jokes and all the puns, because I am all about the puns, as you know. And of course, that little Gohan tidbit. This particular one I remember quite fondly because Kaiser absolutely detests it. Mainly for the fact because the animation is probably one of the worst in the movies or in the Dragon Ball Z era. But I never really realised that at first. But to be fair, the first time I actually watched it was a little 240 by 320 version of it from like 2002. This movie is one of those weird ones because after watching the Big Green compilation, I can now no longer call the Big Getty Star that. It's the Big Gettister, because that is just more... That's just more fun. This one was a lot of fun because it got a lot of nice little Foley of being, kind of like incapacitated with that.
Is that all you got?
And lots of screaming, some really cool attack stuff, and of course, the absolutely infamous Vegeta joke about being kicked somewhere. And there was quite a few instances in this one where, basically,
I'm beginning to suspect that you may have something against your brother.
die. But, and then just go, and it's really, really visceral. I love it. I actually have a copy of it, and I do watch it quite regularly because it was just a lot of fun. And doing a lot of actions and stuff like that, not to mention General Ivan's cooler is just fantastic. I mean, Gohan does have his moments too, kind of like,
Wrong sci-fi, but it'll do.
you don't often get to see a lot of content on New Namek. Yes, it may be popular from a certain animated feature from the late 90s, but it was something that we thought was very appropriate for the time that we were in during the Saiyan saga. This was pretty much the biggest deal for the characters in Z pretty much ever since Dragon Ball Z started, and with the whole Piccolo Jr. arc. This one, it kind of came out of left field. I had no idea that the guys were working on this. I felt like I could sing decently. I mean, I still think I can sing okay, but this was really nice to kind of do something slightly different. And it was just a nice little kind of interlude between episodes 9, 8, basically before the Saiyans arrived. What I really loved about this was the fact that Gohan, basically, there's a lot of Foley that you can obviously hear, where he's just screaming, Piccolo, help! Just like this character just going through all this ravines, being treated really, really weirdly. And it was just kind of cutting through most of the montage of Piccolo and Gohan training together, but it was a really fun way of doing it, instead of just saying, oh, it happened. Abridged series are about cutting the fluff off. But this was a really creative way of doing it. And of course, what I really loved about it was that I get to finish off the song with, I must be swift as a coursing river. To be honest, for 2008 Masako Goku voice, that wasn't actually that bad. I don't dislike it. It was actually not that bad. Yeah. I know a lot of people want us to do a remastered version. I'd be totally down for that. I feel like I could do something pretty good. But yeah, you just gotta ask the Team 4-Star boys for us to do an updated version with maybe something that is a bit more original in terms of score. that wasn't the last time that you'd hear singing Abridged Goku. Now, for those of you who don't know, at the end of every season, we tend to abridge the actual contents of it even more. That's Kai Abridged, because that's what Dragon Ball Z Kai did. It truncated the Dragon Ball Z series into a more compressed format, 291 episodes to 165, roughly. But the purposes of this is to really kind of rush through the entire thing even quicker than before. So I think with Kai 3 and 3.5, we kind of managed to make that in about 10 minutes, the entire Android Cell saga. That's no mean feat, and that was certainly something a lot of fun to do. And one of my big standout moments is that, yeah, there were a couple of really cool screams in there, and we got to revisit some of the, funny moments, and like, alright Cell, bring it! Ow, I quit! Gohan, get him! In a year. That was really fun to kind of like just poke fun at ourselves for the 1 year hiatus, but a lot of things happened in that 12 months that we really had to tackle with in order to make sure that Team 4-Star was still around. We'd rather be around than rush something that we weren't happy with, because episode 60 is a big deal, and we were glad that we pulled it off, and it is on the list. Don't worry for those of you who are thinking it's not on the list, but you'll have to wait for that in a couple of weeks. I got to have a couple of bits of input in here. So the moment when like Cell's just kind of like knocking people out of the way, I then had the idea of, well, for a parallel joke, why don't you have Gohan do the same to Cell? And that got picked up and it got used. So, wait, did we just skip my Oh! And then the response, that was something that I got to have a nod to R&R, with Gohan saying, "Get lost, you dingus." Now, as you know, dingus is something that's been really, really popular with launch in Dragon Ball R&R. So I was really glad that I got to include that in there, and it got kept. And then with a retort, "I'm not the dingus, you're the dingus!" Having something actual direct input into what is said by the characters is always really nice with me. So, number 19 is Kai 3.5. Now, for those of you who don't know, we go through Team 4-Star, we abridge our arcs even more to make Kai series, like Dragon Ball Z Kai does. And for this one, this covers the entire Namek saga, going all the way up until, Goku leaves the planet and such. This was pretty important to me because this was a chance to go back and refine my performance for Goku. Throughout the entire Namek saga, I felt like my performance wasn't that great. It wasn't a really good time in my life, to be honest. It was a time of flux, and how I felt in the group, I really felt a bit like I was on the periphery, and yeah, I felt not really in a good place during like 2011, 2012. But then obviously when I met Philly, things got a lot better around about movie 5. But for about that couple of years, I was really in a funk, and I felt like my performances weren't that great in it. Like around that time, I just felt like I had nothing to contribute to Team 4-Star. This whole Kai 2 thing was a great chance to go back and really refine what I did for Goku and Gohan, because I wasn't really happy with the Goku voice until about episode 28 of the, season 2. I could go back to 2014, like I said, where I was really pretty much happy with my performance as Goku, and really use that for the Namek arc. Same goes for Gohan, and really it was around that time I can go like, right, okay, I can clear my thoughts and not worry about all the times I felt. I don't really look back through the 20s of the Dragon Ball Z Abridged thing much. I kind of start at episode 26 and I go from there. Yeah, because that's the whole Goku Frieza fight. That's one of my favorite moments throughout the entire series. Working with little Kuribo and that stuff, that was really a lot of fun and really important. It was an honor, as it were. I felt like Kai 2 was really good because even though I didn't really get to do much of screaming, I still had the "I am a soup and sandwich! No, Frieza don't know Yamate!" that stuff moments, and just having that parallel with Vegeta. And there were some cool moments in terms of Foley, but not a lot in Kai, because that's not really the point. And I have to admit, I felt a little bit gypped when the whole, "This ruffles my jammies!" that kind of thing, it kind of got cut off, but it was for the purposes of the joke. So there was a running joke with the squeaky toy for Goku, so that's fair enough, to be honest. Yes, I know, a lot of people on this channel think, "Oh, well, Garlic Jr. doesn't exist. You say so, Masako." Well, apparently, in an abridged parody, he did exist. I mean, I know that Scott is a very good editor. I mean, he was able to edit an entire fictional character into DBZ. How impressive is that? This movie was probably the first movie that we did, aside from Cooler, where I really felt comfortable with the voices I was portraying, both with Goku and with Gohan. The Gohan voice, I felt, yeah, okay, I feel pretty happy with that one, as I mentioned in a previous iteration of these videos. And just the chance of doing all those different scenes, and with the extra editing work that Scott did, it was really nutty to see various scenes just made even more unusual. And the absolutely great line of Linner, just like saying,
Love me some Linner, though.
and just remembering all those moments, and just, again, with the meadery, just that being the running joke that Goku thinks, oh, it's a castle, it has to have a meadery.
Where is it? 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 Where is it?
Doing that just now was so easy, but when I was recording that, and this was about like 6 years ago, it was so difficult to actually do that in time, or actually do it at all, just doing that repeatedly in the same line, instead of just like taking it,
Where is it? Where is it?
and just cutting it. No, you just do it in one. And this was actually the first movie that I'd done with Neighborhood Clock Productions back in the day, so it was weird kind of retreading old ground. And there is a joke that I'm glad that was nodded to, at the very least. It was very, very discreet, but for those of you who've watched both versions, you'll know. You'll know. I was a little bit saddened that Gohan didn't get much time to shine, but honestly, the payoff of just Garlic Jr. just going, "Ugh," just like that made up for it. But the crowning glory of that entire movie, and I've said this at many panels, so if you've been to a Team 4-Star panel, I probably have said this, but the last Goku line that is said,
Now let's Gohan go home. It's almost time for deckfest.
and I didn't get the joke when I said the line, and I thought it meant something else. I couldn't stop laughing for 10 minutes, to the point where we couldn't get the line recorded, and Scott was just going, Mars, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. It's almost time for...
It's almost time for...
I was like that for minutes. I just couldn't stop. And then it was about like a year later, I'm like, oh, so that's what it meant. Wait, Masako, episode 44 had you doing less Goku lines than 45, and that's lower on the list. Why is that? Well, it's mainly due to the fact of this was the first really substantial bit of Goku acting that I had in like months. Seriously. It's so many nods to like Luffy and One Piece and stuff like that. Just that whole experience, it was just one of the first examples of us really experimenting with actually adding artwork to make the lip flaps and the expressions look different. We kind of refined that more starting with the Super Android 13 movie in 2015, like a year later after this. But this was like our first foray into it. It's a little bit rough, but we can get away with it mainly because it's inside Goku's head. And he is just thinking,
Yang, I'm Pirate Goku.
just the nods to all the big shonen archetypes, and then
Ninja Goku.
and then you get the payoff in the following episode.
Hey, Pirate Goku, let's go on an adventure. Yeah!
And then just the following thing, and this is something I just always do sometimes, go,
Yeah.
just that whole thing. I think that was something I added in, because I thought, well, you gotta have something that reflects it, but in a way, it's just something a bit madcap for Goku, even though he's asleep, just go,
Yeah.
it's just something like that, just in relation to that other joke. And other than that, there wasn't really much else in terms of stuff that I was involved in, but I do like that episode because it does balance in the whole thing about the West City Southerners and the East City Westmen, that whole sequence. And then, of course, just the ending. Around about the start of Season 3, I know the guys were really wanted to hammer home the fact that Imperfect Cell is a monster. And this does it perfectly, as well as getting in a few jokes in at the same time. And that's one of the things I really admire about TFS, being able to actually have the gravitas as well as the comedy. And that's really why I have this at number 15. Now, with episode 34, this episode I really, really enjoyed because I got to have like 2 little bits of input put in here, because I don't often get the chance to really embrace the character. I mean, especially not back in 2013 when we recorded this. Nowadays, though, I get a little bit more input because Kaiser and I, we tend to figure out what Goku would do and say. We have a really good, like, kind of repartee with Goku. I mean, to be fair, We've been voicing that character together, you know, directing for a long time. I've been voicing this character for 11 years. Well, I mean, more than 11 years if you include the original DBZ movies that Lanny, Vegeta, and I parodied. But the main thing I think you all remember is, I'm on the highway to HFIL. I mean, now a bit louder than it was in the actual episode if you go back to it, you know, with the link up top, as I often do with these top 24 videos. But I really got the chance to use it because I just recorded it because it was like, oh hey, cool, it's the driving cars episode that we're parodying, so why don't we do something like that? Back in 2013, I didn't really think I would ever get the chance to include a line in DBZA, and lo and behold, I did. And that was really, really cool. Not to mention all the different types of jokes in there, because that is where the whole thing about Goku not liking grape-flavored things came around. Is that grape-flavored? I don't like grape. Just that kind of thing. Just being a petulant kid to Trunks who's trying to impart this information. And then, well, it's bacon-flavored. Yay! Just that simple, happy note was something that I really cherished. It just sums up Goku instantly for me. And yes, Lord Slug, I don't remember that movie very well. I mean, I do remember the contents of it, but I don't remember it fondly. It was one of the earlier examples of me watching a DBZ movie, and then I heard the dub version, and the, let's just say the soundtrack is particularly different. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you need to see the early 2000s dub, the original Funimation dub of it, and you'll see what I mean. But in terms of the abridged version, oh yeah, we had a lot to work with here, because, you know, Lord Slug wanting to become young, it's basically the King Piccolo story, and there wasn't really that much to change. You know, Gohan whistling being the weakness, you can't write that stuff, you can't make that up, that's the actual thing. But the real standout moment for me was just the whole, I am Champion Christmas. And actually, I think that was a typo, because that was meant to be, I am the Champion of Christmas, because this is off the back of the Christmas Tree of Might, where Goku has assumed that because he talked to Santa, means that he has now officially become the bastion of the holiday. So he now just goes, I am Champion Christmas! With like false Super Saiyan. It's actually meant to be Super Saiyan, but there was a bit of miscommunication, and thusly we got, well, you know, we got what we got. That was pretty much a precursor, and the earliest opportunity to actually do Super Saiyan Foley, because we wouldn't be able to do that for like another year and a half, was when episode 30 came out. This was like way before that, so this was really great for me. I was really excited and pumped to be able to like do something that is akin to power-up stuff and just go like all out. It's one of the earliest examples, and I remember doing alright. I mean, the earlier stuff, not really that much, except for the Kamehameha in episode 10. Whether it's on this list or not, you'll have to wait and see. Also, Wolverines. Wolverines? Wolverines. Now, with episode 52, it's mostly Cell and Vegeta. That's mostly what it is. And Lanny did a spectacular job with the final flash and all the Foley he had to do for that. That was absolutely brilliant. And Cliff Eintunes, the work he did for the rescoring of the final flash music, beautiful. Eintunes is very talented at what he does. The main thing I remember from this is one of the best examples of why I'm like, ooh, yes, there's some really good Foley for here and screams. But with some Goku ones, I feel like either I could have done better or Kaiser could have picked a better take. But as you all know, this is when Gohan becomes Super Saiyan for the first time. And this was a very pivotal moment. In fact, I remember an earlier cut, this was actually meant to go at the end of episode 51. But Kaiser thought, well, that was going to end up being too long, and then 52 being too short. So this was originally made for 51, but it got tacked on to the start of 52 and became the intro. But the one thing I really, really like is the fact that the Foley for Gohan was really, really good. And for the screams for Gohan, I'm usually pretty good, because my higher register in vocals actually lends itself to doing it better. That's why with Goku, I don't go low, I actually go high. And that is something that Scott and I, Kaiser, have really established, that it actually sounds more menacing if I stay high. Sometimes going low for some like really intense lines, but only lines. But screams, no, you go high up. And the speech that Gohan says that nobody's able to save him this time, it is very true. But that was really good. And it actually broke the cycle of dodging. You know, that's a big deal. But that entire sequence was really, really good. But when Goku does the Kamehameha in that, I feel like that could have been done better, at least for me. And it was really a watershed moment for the performance as Gohan, because throughout this entire thing, he's just a little kid, but now is the point where he's actually starting to go,
well, wait a minute. I'm actually my own person. This is really cool.
And Taka's performance as Cell, you really get to see him stretch his legs. After pretty much a decade of wanting to be Cell, he finally gets to be Cell. And this is a big deal for him, and I'm so proud of what he did. Okay, this has been one of the longest anticipated projects within the DBZA sphere. We knew about Broly for the longest time, and everyone kept saying, when Broly? Well, we have Broly now. And honestly, this entire thing I absolutely loved. It was a very, very tricky thing to script. When I was in Dallas in 2016, they were just starting to write this, and it took months for them to do right, and it was really, really tense. But they certainly came up with the goods, because what we got here was originally very different. There was going to be a moment where there'd be some profanity from Goku, and people would be really shocked because, you know, Chi-Chi doesn't like Goku to swear. My performances here, they were really, really good, I would say, because you get to have that moment where
you're not supposed to start all out. You're supposed to start small and then work up to it.
I am starting small.
Good for you.
Yeah, that's certainly one of those moments. It's just like you get to really bounce off of it, and then there are some good Kamehamehas, and then,
you were saying?
I am saying. Just those moments are just really good. And I love the exchange between Gohan and Piccolo.
Did you get into the school you wanted?
Doesn't look like it.
No!
Because you really get that moment when Piccolo really is starting to get invested in Gohan. And that is really, really cute. You might see that in Season 4. It goes without saying. It's definitely way up there because this was a long time coming. Definitely. And just the finisher, so ironic. Just going,
hey, Broly, say my name.
Everybody did great in this one. And I feel like we did the best that we could. And lo and behold, it's now one of the most viewed DBZA episodes or movies on the channel. The 3-parter from back in the day when on YouTube you couldn't have more than 10-minute videos at a time, so you had to all do it in parts. Those were the days, I guess? This one holds a lot of significance for myself and pretty much anyone who's a fan of Dragon Ball Z Abridged. It is probably one of the first times in this parody series that we could actually, get serious. Because the first season, I openly admit, is not the best. It has aged well in some bits. It's not aged as well in other bits, I will honestly admit. But episode 10 definitely did. And just that moment with the Kamehameha and the Gallic gun, that moment is so, so good. That entire fight sequence was really good. And despite my misgivings with my vocal performance as Goku at the time, it still holds up pretty well. And just the build-up to the Kamehameha, even back then, I still think, you know what, it's not bad. This was still before we actually had direct advice, directing via Skype with Kaiser, overseeing it. This was all still cold reading. Lanny and I, we got to have this really good fight sequence. And I think it holds up pretty well. It was really, really good. And we finally really managed to settle with what we wanted to do with DBZA with that episode. Because before, it was a bit madcap, bit random, but that's what Abridged humor was back in 2008, 2009. Now we were actually starting to get a good idea about what we wanted to do going forward with Season 2. Because Season 2, I think everyone can agree with us, that is when we start to crystallize the overall style of DBZA. So we actually know what we're doing. It could have been a good time to bow out, but honestly we didn't. And I'm glad that we didn't. And with that episode, with all the screams, it still, I think, is a worthy place to, kind of solidify the top 10. Now, The World's Strongest is one of the last movies that I'd seen of Dragon Ball Z. It took me a long time to actually get around to watching this film. I was watching it with an old friend of mine from childhood, and it was certainly very different. It was very focused on martial arts, like the first one, but maybe a little bit more reliant on powers, because this was around the time of the Saiyan saga, so you had more reliance on the Kamehameha, and especially the Kaioken. The Kaioken was intrinsic as well as the Spirit Bomb. The Spirit Bomb then actually setting the tone for the majority of movies, especially the first half of the DBZ movies, where, you know, fighty, then Spirit Bomb, boom, done the end. But for this one, I really liked what the guys did for Dr. Wheelo, and making him just like, I am just trying to be a scientist here. I did not want to be a brain in a jar. Help me. Like, you think that he's going to be a bad guy, but he's actually not. He's just been misguided and misled by his really obsessed friend Kochin, who he's not seen for half a century. I just love that change. And then the animation at the end is just like, it's like the monkey's paw effect in a way. Like, granted, yeah, you get Wheelo his body back. You never said anything about his brain. Ooh. Yeah, that was a bit dark. But when it comes to the performance, Goku's in that one, I absolutely adored. And Kaiser and I both agreed that the Kamehameha that I did against Dr. Wheelo in that movie was probably one of the best ones I've done, because it was one of the ones I didn't really force. I just did it naturally, and it just sounded organic, like genuine. Like I wasn't trying to do it for effect, like, oh, I'm dubbing a Dragon Ball project, so I gotta do a strong Kamehameha! Something like that. No, this was something that was feeling realistic, more pragmatic. And of course, Kaioken times 3.5! You know, it's much better than the Kaioken times 4 that I did in episode 10 that we talked about yesterday. That one was just really good. You get to do some iconic stuff, but the one thing that keeps this from being higher on the list is that I didn't get to do the signature Columbus Kaioken! That one. Columbus's performance in The World's Strongest, the Pioneer dub, sublime. Absolutely great. Really ahead of its time, actually, in terms of authenticity to the original Japanese dub. It was a shame I didn't get to do that. But, as you were able to tell, I could have done it. But I didn't get the opportunity. It was just, Kaioken. And this one is probably the first movie that I felt like I could really kind of collate all of the good experience and development of Goku's voice into one particular product. And that's what we got with movie 5. So Goku's performance in this one, I felt really happy with. And it had some good jokes in it. It's like, hey you, get away from my food, my friends, hey you, get away from my friends, my food, my 2 emergency foods, and my son. That order. Yeah, there are just some nice little nods, and again, this is the first time you get to see General Ivan in action as Cooler, and man, when I first heard his Cooler voice, dang, that's a really good voice. Yeah, I think Ivan knocked that one out of the park, absolutely. And even though I didn't get to voice Goku a lot in this movie, the action that I did get to have was some really good, iconic, you know, lines, like,
Oh, yeah, Chi-Chi, you beautiful woman who lives in my house.
It's a little bit tragic for Chi-Chi, but in terms of the yucks, it's definitely up there. Gohan got a lot to do too, and sadly though, this was the last time that a lot of us got to see Icarus, so yeah, shed a tear for that poor little dragon because his origins are now ambiguous. I'm just saying, nobody ate him. But either way, everybody knows about the Cooler Goku fight, and almost Goku having some sympathy with the guy about really empathizing about, you know, King Cold and stuff. Daddy monkey this, daddy monkey that, and all that kind of thing. So that was a nice little kind of heart-to-heart that Goku and Cooler had while they were fighting underwater. So that was a moment. And then, of course, the one moment I really remember the most is all the Toriyama, no! And just the no! That moment. And then, of course, the Kamehameha pushing back, you know, Cooler's kind of energy ball to try and destroy the planet Earth. Just all of those moments. And, of course,
not going anywhere for a while? Grab a Snickers.
Just one of those moments, and it's actually one of the first ones that Goku really gets to go low and gravelly. Like, really kind of menacing. That was really refreshing. After a lot of time, and I know it's a callback to, I'm going to break you like a Kit Kat bar. We'll talk more about that later on in another video, but Suffice to say, this was a very good time, and it established a lot of things, and it was the first project that Philly and I were dating and when I was recording this, so it was certainly a turning point in my life, let's just say that. Now, movie 7 is one of the few movies that actually is on my phone. I have a video version on my phone, and usually when I'm traveling, like when I'm up in the air or something like that, and there is no Wi-Fi or anything like that, I just stick movie 7 on and it reminds me of good times. It's one of the ones I'm most familiar with, and I really loved it. Just the whole Gohan going,
Big ol' help! Holy cow, that worked!
just those moments I really, really liked, and
For thousands of years I lay dormant.
But, okay, let's be real here. The moment that you guys all remember is the moment when Goku got punched. And yes, I knew this was a long time coming. Ever since I first saw clips of that movie back in 2001, I knew that there was a moment when Goku got that particular moment. And yes, and when we did DBZA and we were abridging the movies, it was gonna happen. It was gonna happen, and it did. And I was looking forward to that because it was just, woo! And then just,
He punched me in the neck! Why? Why did he punch me?
and no, that wasn't like any kind of filters to increase the pitch or anything like that. No, I'd practiced. I'd made sure to make that moment absolutely spectacular for anyone who wanted retribution after Goku was smarting after Vegeta having a similar thing happen to him in the previous movie. Yeah, no, that was good. But the real moment I was really looking forward to was the Spirit Saiyan sequence. That moment of just having all of that Foley and just letting out that powerful scream, that was so, so nice. I think this was actually the last DBZA project that I recorded with my Blue Yeti, because my current Neat King B microphone that I record with, that was used from then on. This was like the last one, and I actually remember a lot of good reactions from Youmacon. The last Youmacon I ever went to back in 2015 was where this movie premiered, and that was good times. One of the really nice moments where we could all connect. I love going to conventions and premiering new episodes and stuff at panels. You get to see the live reaction, and sometimes we go and sit down with the audience, you know, and actually just go and watch it ourselves. Episode 28 is an episode I remember fondly when I first saw it go live on YouTube. Around about March 2012, I was at a convention with Falero, and we were just watching the episode, and it recently just come out. I remember we had pizza and everything like that, and we were just getting to see it all as a complete package. I hadn't seen that episode prior to it going live, and it was something that dawned on me that all the stuff I did in that episode really went a long way into informing you lot what the main voice of Goku was going to be in DBZA going forward. You know, it wasn't so much as the kind of regular Goku voice or elite. What's that mean? Kind of like lower and a bit like I kind of got like my lip kind of swollen by hit by stung by a bee or something like that. It sounded a bit like restricted almost, but I chalk that down to inexperience on my part.
You start to see Goku kind of going a bit higher.
Something more that you are familiar with today. And before that episode, I kind of semi-recoil, just kind of going, no. Just in terms of my performances, everyone else, they improved much faster than I did. But the main thing I really remember was it was the beginning of the Goku Frieza fight. One of my favorite sections of the entirety of DBZA, because it was both serious and also quite comedic. Just all the moments really lent itself well to the overall product. And the star of it all, the ×20 Kaioken Kamehameha. That was one of the first actual attack shouts that I did that came naturally, because it was just Kamehameha! Something like that. It was just like really visceral, and you had to do it quickly. There was no time to charge it. It was just like, boom, let's get it yeah, Kaioken! And of course, Frieza doing the Kaio what, and no, seriously, Kaio what? Just, it was almost kind of capping off the joke. We tend to do that in TFS. Once you find out that that joke's starting to wear thin, you kind of cap it. Like the I need an adult and I am adult with Gohan going,
No, No, you're not.
But that Foley, that Kaioken moment was really, really good. And just going off against Frieza in that one, it's something I hold dear to this day. Now, I've been holding off on the later episodes on this list because I've got to sort of balance this with what I feel in terms of nostalgia and what I was able to do at the time when I had less experience, and to what I've done now. So I'm being quite pragmatic here. I'm not just going to stick the obvious ones at the top or near the top because, you know, this is my list. This is something that I had as my own personal experiences. So that does carry some weight to it. But the one thing I will admit is that this moment was pretty much something I was looking forward to as well. The instant Kamehameha. And I've poked fun at it from various dubs, including the Portuguese one, the infinite Luz! Luz infinita. Okay, I'm taking a little bit of liberty with that, but I pay attention to dub Gokus who don't give their all when it comes to Foleys and screaming. This is one of the few examples that it actually came out better than I remember, because I did the scream, but we didn't have the actual footage to go off of, so I was kind of doing it blind. And then when I saw the final product, when Kaiser was sharing with me the demos to see what it looked like, to see if there were any editing glitches or anything like that, I saw it and I was like, wow, okay, this is actually giving me chills. And I don't often get chills when it's my own experiences, because an interesting fact, if you're getting into voice acting, the voice that you hear as you are recording and the voice you hear played back, they're very, very different. So that's why initially when you start doing this, or maybe it's people that you know, and they go, oh, I don't like the sound of my voice, because it's not what they're used to. They're not used to hearing that. They're only used to what they're hearing because of the resonance inside of their own head. Because I'm hearing it straight on, whereas you guys are hearing it all around. This moment and the entirety of the Cell games was really, really good. Episode 58, yeah, that's all very well and good, but 59, that's when it really, really got to the top because of that moment and just really taking it seriously. Those big Goku moments I take super seriously, as you will be able to tell with the ones going forward in the top 5.
What? Episode 60? It's not number 1? Why is this, Masako?
Well, the reason why it is because I didn't have the most fun recording this. I mean, the whole process of it, you know, with Amber and Scott working on it with me in the booth, that was great and all. And everything went tickety-boo as that in terms of that, technically wise. But for me, no. The recording was really, really tense for me because it was a big deal. It was something I'd been longing to do for a decade. And it's sort of like what happened with another episode I'm going to be talking about later on in this chart, but at least with that one, that went better than this did. We spent an hour and a half doing that scream. That 8-second scream. It's just 8 seconds. Normally, I could do that, but then I had the foolish idea of trying to do it in sync with the visuals. Like, why do I need to do that? Upon reflection, I already know what it looks like. Why give myself that extra pressure? And ultimately, it got to that point where I'd done 9 or 10 takes of the Gohan Super Saiyan 2 scream, and my throat was completely gone. So, yeah, we failed to record that bit, and I was kicking myself. I felt so awful because I couldn't do it. I had to record it when I got home. And, yeah, that was a bit of a low point for me. I felt like I'd failed. Yeah. But having said that, though, the thing that brought that back up again was going to Saiyan Japan. Seeing everybody react to it with the round of applause, I almost cried on the panel. Seriously, if you were at the Saiyan Japan 2018 premiere of episode 60 part 1, you will have been able to tell that I was a little emotional. All that stress just kind of ebbed away, that at least I know that I did good with you guys, that I did it justice. Yeah, that's one of the things I was really, really nervous about, whether people would think, what, whether that's it, Masako, I expected better from you. Well, I did the best I could. I did it to the best of my ability, and I feel like I couldn't really do any more. Makes me really introspective when I look back at that recording session. It was, yeah, that wasn't a good time. And because of that, because of the fact that I actually failed to do it right there and then when I should have, that's why it's not number 1. It doesn't really fill me with joy when I recorded that. Most of the time on this list, it normally does, but for this, no. I mean, it was an honor, and all the Goku stuff was absolutely fine. No, but it was just that Gohan moment. Trying to figure out the Gohan Super Saiyan 2 voice, I was worried I couldn't do it. This is the reason why I really wanted it up here, because one of the actual conditions of this entire list is moments where I scream fully. And this one, this was like a 25-second stint of me just screaming my lungs out by emulating Goku while he's having his, heart virus really take effect. And yeah, that was certainly a challenge that I did not expect. A lot of these ones I was anticipating, this one, not so much. It was when I got to the episode and Kai's was like, okay, you gotta scream your lungs out. Wait, what? Really? I mean, I did it. It was just like going, sort of like that. Basically, this isn't just your average power-up scream. This is you in absolute agony. You have to emulate that, and for some reason, by George, I did it. That was almost one continuous, file. Just ask Kaiser. It was like that. And we then recorded another one when Goku goes, just carry on like that. So just like going on for that next bit when Yamcha has to then, start counting again. I don't know why I find that funny. Maybe it's just like, I don't know. But it was one of those moments I just really was not expecting, but yeah. That's why it's at number 3, because of just the sheer surprising nature of it, and the fact that I was able to do it, and the fact that it was a really good way of practicing my Nozawa Foley and screaming, because, yeah, it's visceral, and it's very, very raw. Really? I mean, it was a good performance and all, but really, at number 2? Yeah, at number 2. The reason why is because it contains probably one of the best Super Saiyan screams I've ever done, because I never really thought about it while I did it. There was no, tension in terms of having to make sure it was absolutely perfect. It was a little bit more flexible, and that was great. After maybe, a year or so of not doing one. For this, I actually looked at a compilation video about Goku powering up to that Super Saiyan form for the first time, whilst, beginning to have the heart virus in multiple languages. And I wanted to look at something that kind of really made the most of what was going on at the time. It was just following the pattern that Calamus did. Because I think this was when Calamus was still doing it for the Ocean dub. And it was just like the just really lashing out for that last one. And I love it. I go back to that every single time, and I think it just really suits what's going on screen. Probably one of the best ones I really can remember, at least off the top of my head. And that's why it's up there. Right off the bat, I will say, was probably one of my favorite episodes to record for, and certainly one of the most memorable. It was certainly the longest recording session I've ever done, because we recorded all 3 parts in one go. Yes, there were at least so many lines that Goku had throughout that entire 3-parter. I had to do 2 sessions, and each of them were 2 hours long. 2 hours of screaming and Foley, and everything that you see in that 3-parter took 4 hours to record for. That was just so intense. But not as intense as that scream. It took me 25 takes for that one scream. I could do it, but I wanted to do it right. And Scott was saying, dude, we've got enough. Are you sure you want to continue? I was like, yes, I need to get this done. I need to make sure this is good. This is right. Because this is one of the most important moments for Goku. Like with episode 60 with Gohan, I had to get it right. But unlike that time, I managed to succeed here. With Goku, I mean, I know that if I had to go back and do it again, I could do a better job because, more experience and all that. And certainly you get a taster of that in Kai 2 with the, this ruffles my jammies. Everything in that series of episodes and parts was just so crucial in how I developed the Goku voice. And, of course, I'm going to break you.
like a Kit Kat bar. Stuffed crust, King Kai. You can eat it in reverse.
All of these really memorable lines, and of course the punchline of the muffin button. That was just so funny seeing. And it's actually one of the earliest examples of us changing the face that you see in Dragon Ball, because as you remember, when Goku's pressing the button, he's actually really angry, but we change it to him going, "Yay!" All that kind of stuff. That was Zach Manley doing that, who did the 4-Star Force fan art animation back in the day. If you don't know what I'm talking about, search 4-Star Force or Team 4-Star Force, you'll see what I'm talking about here. Needless to say, that entire experience, it may have been long, it may have been hard on my throat, but you can't deny it, that it's certainly one of the most important and certainly one of the most viewed episodes in our entire back catalogue. Over 20 million views now, at least for part 1. So combined, that 3-parter, maybe nearly 40 million views? That's a lot. You don't forget that.